Hello everyone. The Capital One Venture card has one of its all-time high offers going on right now, and while I don't think the Capital One Venture is the greatest credit card in the world, it is a great mid-tier travel card that has a really nice increased bonus that I have personally used to get a ton of extra value. And before we get too deep into talking about the Capital One Venture, I do want to shamelessly say that I do have a referral link in the pinned comment below. If after watching this video you are interested in the Capital One Venture card, it would mean a lot if you use my referral link. I have been able to use Capital One miles for a ton of awesome value in the past, and to be able to recharge that balance of it would mean the world to me. So if you do, I just want to say thank you. Please reach out to me, and I'd love to personally thank you. Now let's get back to the video. As you can see here on the Capital One page, you have a limited time offer where you can earn up to $1,000 towards travel. Now that number isn't quite right if you use these points correctly, but you can earn a $250 travel credit and 75,000 bonus miles after making $4,000 in purchases in the first 3 months, as you'll see here, or right under the limited time offer. What the Capital One Venture card earns you is 2x miles per dollar on every purchase, which is pretty nice. Everyone needs a good catch-all card, and there are no foreign transaction fees. While I personally do not use the Capital One Venture card in my day-to-day life, whenever I travel overseas, I use the Capital One Venture and Capital One Saver duo. While I currently am kind of bankrupt in Capital One miles, when I'm traveling abroad, unless I'm working a sign-up bonus, I'm not too concerned about my credit card rewards. I just want to make sure I have some reliable cards that I can use in a pinch, and that is what the Capital One Venture card is to me right now. You can also earn 5x miles on hotels, vacation rentals, and rental cars booked through the Capital One portal. On its face, this just seems like a very solid value proposition. Unfortunately, there is a $95 annual fee and no true way to offset that cost with any credits. And if you were to just put spend on it, you'd have to put quite a lot of spend to get $95 worth of value every single year. So while I do not think the Capital One Venture card is the best card out there, if you are someone like me who can just never be approved for the Capital One Venture X, I would recommend using the Capital One Venture card. Take this sign-up bonus, get your Capital One miles, and see if the ecosystem is right for you. There are a ton of other awesome use cases for the Capital One ecosystem, especially Capital One offers as well as Capital One shopping. You can earn a ton of extra miles using those portals, and you can unlock that by having a Capital One Venture card. So while you might not be able to offset the annual fee using credits directly applied to your statement every month, if you use the Capital One shopping portal, you can earn an extra 10, 20, 30, 100,000 Capital One miles if you do your online shopping through that portal. Now here is the Capital One offers portal that I currently have here. So you can see things like 2x online Walmart, 3x Marriott Bonvoy, 3x Expedia, 4x on Dick's, 4x on IHG, 3x on Priceline, 35x on GNC purchases, 11x on Macy's, 5x on Get Your Guide. So there are a ton of awesome offers here that you can use. While I personally use Rakuten myself, I would say there are times in which the Capital One offers portal is significantly better than Rakuten. Sometimes Rakuten's better, and Rakuten does have those bank bonuses that you can use to get, 25, 30,000 billed to MR rewards. But for just shopping, Capital One offers is quite nice. Let's see, 20x on Carter's, 8x or 5x on event tickets, 5x on Ticket Smarter, which is a platform I personally use a lot, 15x on 1-800-Flowers. Again, there are a ton of opportunities here to earn a ton of miles. Now, I want to be very transparent. I have used the Capital One Venture card. It is probably the card, other than my Delta Reserve, that I've put the most money on in my time with credit cards. I personally do not use the card a ton right now, but it is currently in my backup wallet if I were to ever have any issues with my current setup. And it is also the card I bring when I go overseas, just because I do trust Capital One more than Amex to be used overseas. They are MasterCard, so I normally tend to bring my Capital One duo of a Capital One Venture card, the Capital One Saver card, and then just a random Visa card that has no foreign transactions, just in case for some reason they don't accept MasterCard. I've never run into that issue, but I've definitely run into the issue of trying to use the American Express card overseas and them saying no Amex. One specific offer I have used in the past is Hostel World. Here it is 30x. Unfortunately, when I did it, it was, I think, like 10x, but 30x is awesome. I was able to use my $250 travel credit to, I believe it was 3 nights in Rome. It might have been 4, depending on when we flew in, and 1 night in Naples, all on that travel credit. I didn't stay at any fancy hotels, but I was able to stretch that $250 travel credit quite far by using Hostel World and staying in a private room. There weren't any crazy awesome amenities, and it wasn't in the best location in Rome, but it was free. And at the end of the day, That's kind of what I'm looking for when I'm traveling. So now that we've talked a little bit about what the Capital One Venture Card can unlock through its offers and how I've personally used the $250 travel credit, how did I use the 75,000 bonus miles when it comes to the Capital One Venture Card? Now, I personally transferred all of my Capital One miles to Aeroplan, which I think is Capital One's best transfer partner. Their transfer partners, I would say, are just maybe on par with like a Wells Fargo. They have some good ones, but they don't really have a marquee hotel program that they can transfer to at a great rate. And they are missing things like a Hyatt, an American, a Delta, a United. So while I don't think their points are the best, if you are someone that is looking to travel internationally in first or business class, Capital One Miles will get the job done for you. I have a playlist on my channel going over my 2026 mega redemption where I'm going to Japan, and all of my flights and hotels will be booked fully on points. My goal was to pay $0 for business class flights and hotels, and while I do have to pay the taxes on my business class flights, I'm just going to discard that for now. This entire trip is based off the back of Capital One Miles. So as you can see from one of my first videos I ever made, only 32 views, let's get that number up here. I talk about the start of my biggest points redemption ever, where I used Capital One Miles through Aeroplan to book a business class flight on Singapore Airlines. In this video, I kind of go over some of the options I'm looking for when it comes to, hey, I have all these Capital One Miles, how can I use them through Aeroplan? And as you can see here, LAX to Tokyo Narita is 75,000 Capital One Miles. Now you'll see some options that are 200,000, 485,000, not great. But as long as you are looking for saver rewards, which are, again, the more cheaper options of flights, and you are willing to be flexible with your dates, you can find a ton of options at 75,000 miles from LAX to Tokyo. And the way in which a lot of these airlines release their business class flights, you really need to book either a year in advance or maybe like 2 weeks in advance if you're specifically flying to Tokyo. But I would say if you're flying to Europe and you're kind of open of where you want to fly into Europe, it's not that difficult to find that award availability. But if you're looking for award availability to Japan, I think you kind of have to do a little bit more work, but Capital One Miles can easily get you there for 75,000 miles, which is one sign-up bonus. Again, this is only flying one way, but luckily I was putting a lot of spend on the Capital One Venture Card. I had a Capital One Saver card, so I was able to move that sign-up bonus as well as all of that spend over, and I was lucky enough to get, I believe, 2 referrals, which were an additional 40,000 points. I believe one was my mother and one was my roommate. So again, nothing from YouTube really, but I was able to earn some nice miles. And again, as you'll see here for my return flight, I did want to visit a second country when I went to Japan, just because when I like to travel, I want to hit as many countries as possible, see all the highlights. So I decided to go with Taiwan. And now if you want to fly from Taiwan to America and vice versa, there is a ton of availability, as you'll see here. 75,000 points from Taipei to Los Angeles. You can find this almost any time. It's a much less popular route than Japan, and it is a nice way to get very close to Japan on business class quite easily. And then maybe if you want to do that Taipei to Tokyo flight and not in business class, you can at least get most of the way there. So is a Capital One Venture Card a card that you are considering? This is a very solid welcome bonus. And like I said, if you can't get the Venture X but still want access to the Capital One ecosystem, I think the Capital One Venture Card is a great little travel card, especially for beginners. While that card does not currently fit in my wallet, if anything were to go wrong with one of my other setups, Capital One will always be there for me. And while I do not plan on ever canceling the Capital One Venture Card, I might downgrade it to a Capital One Venture One card, which is the no annual fee option, hopefully with the option to upgrade back in the future. If you are interested in the Capital One Venture Card, I do have my referral link down in the pinned comment and description below. It would mean a lot if you use my referral link, and I really only want to promote cards that I have personally used and have experience with. And while I will say that my trip to Japan would not be possible without Capital One Miles, and while it is not an ecosystem I'm focusing on right now, it is one that is a solid backup for me. So if you made it to the end of this video, I just want to thank you. Feel free to give it a like, comment, subscribe. I would love to hit 500 subscribers as soon as possible. I have a ton of awesome members-only videos I have in mind, and one is specifically around the Capital One Venture Card and how I was able to have that $95 annual fee waived this year. So like I said, let's continue the discussion in the comments. Have a great rest of your day.